All right, so I think we're recording. All right, hey everybody, welcome all to fraud examination, to your master's program. If you're just starting your master's program, it's exciting. This is a fun class, so let's talk about it a little bit. So what we're going to do in here, and the only thing we're going to do in here, is prepare for and take the CFE exam. That's it. All right. So today we're going to kind of talk about the way the course will go. We'll talk about what the CFE exam is. We will talk about some tips on preparing for this. We'll talk about how doable this exam is. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. I've got 20 practice questions that we can look at. And we'll just kind of get a good start. Now, I posted a file on the course and the materials and things, so maybe we should start with that. Let me pull that up real quick. Let's see. All right. There we go. All right, so the materials. So I think the main thing at this point is we need to make sure that we all have at least 6 hours of college credit this semester. All right, that's going to save you a ton of money. All right, so what we need to do, we need to get our stuff first. Some of you may have already done that, and that's good. We're going to allow plenty of time for this. Becomes, as you'll see, very much a self-study type of thing. Y'all aren't going to need a whole lot of me on this. Now, we'll meet and we'll cover all the material together, and I'll tell you, hey, pay attention to this. This is tested heavily, and that kind of thing, and things like that along the way. But really, you don't need me to do this. You'll find out after a couple of classes that you'll be just fine. So we don't have to meet every week. So, okay, so to get going, I'm a little bit at a disadvantage on this because I can't go through this process of applying and everything. So any changes they may have made in the past, I can't know about until somebody gets in there and figures it out. So if there's some things in here that's not accurate anymore, let us know and we'll get it changed, and everybody will have a smoother time getting it done. Heidi, you've done it, right? You've applied. How far have you gotten in this process?
I actually got it today.
Your stuff came in today.
Yeah. It only took like a day.
It only took you a day.
I think I applied yesterday.
Anything in there not true, or huh? You didn't even bother reading that.
I didn't know that was there.
You just went rogue, did your own thing.
Student membership, and then you called them.
Okay, so we got somebody here who didn't even read any of this and just got it done. So I think everybody will be all right. See, I told you don't need me in here. You're just proving that. But yeah, for those who don't get in there, here's the deal. And if there's something not true, let me know. But you got to be a member of the ACFE. That's the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. You can get a student membership, but you got to be enrolled in 6 graduate hours. So for the class, you need this student membership package, and I got a link for you there. And it's all just a matter of going through their process and applying. Your materials in here are a little expensive. They're $400, but that covers the exam itself, all your study materials. So it's good, it's worth it. And if you look at what it would cost as not a student, you'll see it's really worth it. Your student membership in the ACFE is $25. Get out of school and it's $175. Don't have a student membership anymore. This prep course that you get is $800. All right, that's included as in your package along with the exam. That's just the prep course itself, I think, without the exam. So y'all are getting a good deal, a really good deal being students. So that's good. So it's all in here. So work through figuring out how to get all your materials. That's step one. We got to get that going. Now, this fraud examiner's manual, for you guys who aren't here live and in person, y'all get a digital copy, so y'all won't be as intimidated, but there it is. Let me focus in there. It's big. It's a lot of pages, but it's so doable. All right, and you'll see. So it's so doable. It is, if you don't get behind, it's very doable. And if you knock out a few pages a day, you'll see it doesn't take that long at all. All right, not at all. I've been in many of a continuing education seminar with pages from that thing. I took a bunch of pages. I'm like, this should get me through all 8 hours today. And I read through all of those pages in probably 30 minutes and was bored the other 7.5 hours. So you had a question?
How many pages is a few pages?
How many total pages?
Like, how many are you saying?
What are you saying the few?
Per day?
Yeah.
All right, so I just got my book in, so I haven't been able to update this, but the 2017 edition, it's only 2,100 pages. It's not.
I don't really read.
Right, if you stay on top of it.
I was thinking like 75 pages.
Right. Are y'all all still seeing the screen too? With the Word document, is that showing up on y'all's page, or are y'all just seeing my face? Yes, okay, good. I was a little nervous about this. All right. Now, I'll update this now that I got the new version, but it's about 2,150 pages, but and I've got a lot of tips for you on how to manage that. There are pages that you can skip completely. There are pages that you can skim through, and there are some pages you'll want to read kind of closely, and you'll kind of learn, there's tons of repetition in here. And there's tons, this is a reference manual, all right? It's not meant to be read cover to cover. There are charts, there are step-by-step instructions on things, there are form letters to use, skippable stuff, very skippable stuff. So don't be intimidated by that page count. It is not anywhere near as intimidating as 2,100 pages sounds, I promise. But if you just sit there and knock out 22 pages a day, maybe a half hour, you'll be good. Yes, ma'am?
Is that, do you have that posted for us to do?
I will when I update it, yeah. I have like 3 documents I'm going to pull up today. I'll post all those for you once I update them. So we'll bounce back to this in a minute. All right, so let's see. Okay, yeah. All right, so let's talk about, there's not a whole lot to say about the course. The syllabus is pass the CFE exam. There's 4 parts to it. Those are 4 exams in the class, 25% apiece. So I want and hope everybody will pass the whole thing, all right? It's very doable. Y'all should be fine to do it. This is the 3rd time we've done this class, and 95% of the people knock the thing out with no CFE exam. Since we're doing all of this. So, certified fraud examiner. So we can walk out of here almost being able to call ourselves certified fraud examiners. If someone's met experience requirement already, they can call themselves a certified fraud examiner when they finish this class. We'll get there in a second. But and I just grabbed this from their website. But what does that mean? I'm a CFE. Well, it means that you have the expertise in fraud prevention, detection, and deterrence. It means that you have the ability to identify warning signs and red flags that might indicate that fraud is going on. This is a fun class too, by the way. There's a lot of stories in here, a lot of examples of frauds that people have committed, and you kind of lose your faith in humanity in here a little bit too, to see all of the things people have done. And it even gets outside of financial fraud a little bit and talks about some other things that people do to people, and you just kind of, you get bummed out with people a little bit, but it's interesting stuff too. But you'll rely a little bit on your financial transactions knowledge, but there's no number crunching in here at all. All right? There's no need for a calculator. You will be doing no math in this class. It's all concept. and we'll talk a bit about investigative techniques, a little bit about law, and how to deal with fraud allegations and things like that, right? So the steps to certification, that's our goal in here. So you got to be eligible. We're all master's students in here. So we all have a bachelor's degree. So we're good on the education requirement. Bachelor's degree in anything, it will make you eligible. You got to be a member of the ACFE. That's just a matter of paying $25 to the ACFE as a student. So we'll be all right there. The thing that's kind of not ideal for us is you also need 2 years of professional experience, either directly or indirectly related to fraud. All right, this is very broad. And we can pass the exam, and I think they give you, I forget how many years, but you got plenty of time to knock this out. Let me show y'all something. Oops, not that. I'm not ready for that yet. Well, that's exactly where I was. Oh, here's what I need. I don't think this is meant to be your list of things that work, but I think they're so broad on what professional requirements will count. And here's some things they listed under one of their little tabs on their website about what types of jobs a CFE might do. I figured they'll count these, right? So look how broad this is. External auditor, internal auditor, forensic accountant, of course, audit specialist, audit consultant, information systems auditor, management consultant, technical specialist, financial analyst, financial specialist, special agent, private or legal investigator, security consultant, director of loss prevention, a fraud analyst, a fraud investigator, a risk manager, a tax manager, a bankruptcy analyst, a compliance officer. Pretty much anything, right? Except for, I do payroll or something like that. That's more bookkeeping type things probably wouldn't work either. But, any other type of job that y'all might go into is going to count, right? Mine counted. I was just CPA firm, tax and audit. They said, you're good. So the professional requirements, very, very broad. All right. Okay, so that's what you got to do, and you got to pass the test. But that's step one. So eligibility requirements. So when y'all start filling out all your forms and stuff, they'll have points for you to add up so you can show that you're eligible. All right, so you'll have the points to take the exam, but you will not be able to check that professional box yet. But once you do, then you can be called a CFE. You can sit for the exam once you have a bachelor's degree. And I just said that. See, I get ahead of myself. All right. So there's all the stuff about experience. We talked about all of that. Okay, so step 2, take the CFE exam. That's what we're going to do in here. This is a test you can sit at your kitchen table and take. You don't have to go to a Prometric site or anything like that. Now, 4 sections in this thing, 125 questions. They are only multiple choice and true-false questions. There's no problems to do. You have 75 seconds to answer each one. You got a little clock ticking, which is a little intimidating until you get the hang of it. It's not that bad, though. And it's more than enough time to answer most of these questions. Some of these questions you can knock out in 4 seconds, and then you move on to the next one. And we'll talk about this later on as we get farther, but you got 75 seconds to answer a question. Say the question before took 4 seconds. And you get to the next one and you're like, oh my goodness, let me think, and then that clock's ticking away. Go back to the other question and run that clock out. That gives you extra time. So you can revisit any other question. There's time still on the clock on each question. So that's just a little tip that you'll learn on your own as you're going through there. You start panicking about one and you can't remember, you can buy a little extra time from the other questions. To pass, 75, that's all you need. You can miss one for every 4 that you take. All right, 125 questions. You can pretty much miss 31 of them. That's a lot. All right. When I took the thing, I'm like, there were like 5 or 6 of these I didn't know for sure. You know, like, well, shoot, I missed 30 of them. So, you know, it's a real easy, I don't want to say it's real easy, but it's kind of an easy-ish test. You get your exam results really quick, 3 to 5 days. Mostly the next day you get your exam results back. The good news, if you fail one, $25. That's it to retake it, $25. When I read that, I said, I'm taking all 4 of them right now and not studying a bit. Past 2, those were done. Paid $50 to take the other 2 after studying a little bit. All right. I'm not recommending that, but I'm not against it either. You know, save a little time, right? You know, but this is a classroom where we're supposed to be learning this, so I probably shouldn't say, hey, roll the dice. But if you pass it, you obviously know it, so move along, right? Now, the only trick to that is you got 3 shots at it. So say, all right, so I took, well, here's exactly what happened to me. I took all 4 sections without studying, passed 2. All right, I did not pass the law section because I didn't really have a law background. I forgot what else I didn't pass, but I skimmed. I'm like, all right, let's put a little time into this. I passed the other section, whatever it was, and still failed law. I'm like, all right, I got to buckle down and study some law here. If I had failed law the 3rd time, I'm starting over, all 4 sections again. So you got 3 shots at it. You miss it, you don't pass them all after 3 shots, you're starting over.
You have 3 shots at each section, or just?
It works. 90% of our questions come from this manual we're using. They say that 10% comes from this corporate fraud handbook. I don't remember seeing any questions on the CFE exam that I didn't encounter in that fraud examiner's manual, though. So I just put that on there because that's what they say. This exam manual that we're using will get you there. All right. Here's what the sections are. Financial transactions and fraud schemes. That's by far the easiest one. It relies on things you probably already know, as you'll see as we get into it. That one was a breeze. Law is the hardest one to me anyway, because how much law do we have really? We took a couple of business law courses and that was about it. This gets pretty detailed. Law, you'll spend a lot of time with it. That's okay. Investigation is probably the 2nd easiest one. A lot of common sense stuff there. Prevention and deterrence is kind of weird. It's not hard stuff, but there's some weird questions in there, and that's the other section I didn't pass just without studying. That one got me because I'm like, it'd be like questions and like, who developed the fraud triangle? I don't know who developed the fraud triangle. I do now, but you know, stuff like that. That's not just walking around knowledge. It's like, according to this study that was done here, what did they say was the most common blah, whatever? I'm like, oh, shoot. So you got to kind of read that section to get all that information. But that's your 3 or your 4 sections. Yes?
Are the books kind of broken out by section?
Yes. Yeah, they're broken out into sections 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yes. All right. Okay, so looking on beyond this class, once you're certified, you got to maintain your certification. You've got to do 20 hours of professional education. I'm assuming y'all are all going to go for the CPA exam too. You got to do 40 hours there, so pretty much good on the 20 that they need. The only trick is 10 of them have to relate to the detection and deterrence of fraud, and 2 of them have to relate to ethics, but that's not a problem. Just kind of strategically plan your continuing education. And there's some carry forwards and stuff. You don't have to worry about any of that right now. So that's the CFE exam in a very small nutshell there. Any questions on any of that? Let's see. I don't think there's any questions out there. Chat box pops up if there is, I think. I hope. Yeah. All right. Okay. All right, so let's go back to this. So you were asking sections, here's the way it's broken out. So you got section 1 is financial transactions and fraud schemes. And in the 2 years ago edition, that's 676 pages. That's our easiest section. Look at part 1, accounting concepts. They talk about what an asset is and a liability. And I'm telling you, you're just like, well, shoot, done. So it's easy. Financial statement fraud gets a little heavier. It's an interesting read, though. All this asset misappropriation stuff is really interesting. So the reading there will kind of fly by. They talk about bribery and corruption. The asset misappropriation, stealing stuff. So section 3 is stealing cash. Section 5 is stealing inventory or other assets. There's lots of stories in there about what people have dreamed up to pull off. You'll read this, and it sometimes seems like a fraud instruction manual, really. You'll be like, why are they telling me how to do this? But, I guess they're trying to tell you to be on the lookout for this type of thing. Theft of data, theft of intellectual property, bribery and corruption, that's interesting. Financial institution fraud, payment fraud, insurance fraud, healthcare fraud, consumer fraud, computer and internet fraud, contract and procurement fraud. So it's all about these different fraud schemes. So section 1's easiest. Section 1's definitely the most interesting. So that's where we start. It's a good start to the class. You kind of get the hang of things reading that. So that's about 700 of your pages. Law's only 577 pages. That's the hardest one, but it gets interesting too. Talks about all the laws that tie into fraud. Some of these things will be familiar to you. They'll throw Sarbanes-Oxley in there a bit, and that shows up in several of the sections. They'll throw in some anti-kickback stuff, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. You'll see it over and over and over again. And then what gets hard to me, or for the first time anyway, is where you get down beyond the different sections here, the laws like bankruptcy fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, tax fraud, and then you get into all this criminal justice system. That's where it gets kind of difficult. The civil justice system and all these principles of evidence. I way understudied on that principles of evidence thing, and it kicked my tail. So we'll spend some time on that. So that's law. We've got fraud investigation. So it's planning and conducting a fraud examination, analyzing documents, interviewing suspects. That's kind of interesting. Covert examinations. So we're setting up surveillance and stuff like that. Where do we find certain information? Analyzing data, writing reports, and things like that. And then section 4, understanding criminal behavior, getting a little bit of psychology here. White collar crime, corporate governance, fraud, responsibilities, prevention, risk assessments, managing risk, and 8 pages on ethics. That's your shortest section. It's only 391 pages. Investigation is 500 pages. So your longest section is that easiest section. So that's good, right? So here's my tips for you as you kind of get going. And this is just in my experience, this is what you can kind of look out for. So to me, the key to passing this thing is to be really well organized. Don't get rushed. Don't get to the point where you're like, I just have to get something figured out. I'm skipping this section. I don't have time. Don't get to that point. All right. Take your time. Stay on top of it. Stay organized. Don't get overwhelmed with this. Read the pages, and I say read the pages. Read closely sometimes. Skim through it sometimes. Skip it all together sometimes. You'll get the hang of that. Like, yeah, this is skippable. Any appendixes, skip it. You don't need it. Examples, they're fun to read, but if you're in time crunch, you can skip those. Sample letters and reports, don't bother. Skip that. It's a reference material, right? So you don't have to study every bit of it. Think about, and this is a good tip for any exam, think about what the person making this exam would ask you. This is, humans are writing these questions. what might they ask? If you were making an exam, what would you ask? So as you're reading, you might see something like, there's no way they can phrase a question to ask this. You just move on. Or you read something like, well, that seems like something easy to ask. Make sure you make a note of it. Make notes of things you think are important. If it's something that's obvious and you already know it, don't make notes about it. You already know it. And again, I mentioned you're studying from a reference book. There's a lot of repetition in here. Don't make notes the same thing twice over and over. Keep it concise and organized. I recommend for sure that you type your notes. Y'all may have different study habits, but to me, reading through, typing notes is good because you can go back. There's a lot of repetition. Sometimes they'll add a little to something they had talked about earlier, though, so you can go back and add that in the appropriate section and keep it better organized, especially in the law section. You know, that the law section isn't organized the best to me. They'll talk about a law and they'll talk about a couple things about it, and then it'll come up again later and they'll add a few more things about it. So then you're scattered all over the place with it. But if you bounce back and add another bullet point to that law, then you got it in a nice, neat format. You don't have to read this more than once. You can't, right? Read it for the first time and the only time. So make the necessary notes that you need. You don't have time to go back and read this stuff. Don't fall behind. Don't rush through it. Now, here's, in my opinion, the key thing. You're going to have a lot of practice questions as part of your prep materials that you get. Do every one of those, all right? You'll see some of those questions, again, identical, same thing on your exam. Do those, get an idea of what types of things they ask, make notes about the things you miss. Those are very important. Coming up on test time, read over your notes. Get to the point where you can just recite it as you read the first couple of words. You're like, okay, I know exactly what that sentence is. Mark it with a highlighter and don't ever look at it again. You know it by then, right? That's the kind of the way I study anyway. Y'all may have a different way. I'm just telling you what I do. I'm bad to put little index cards of certain topics, and I'll stick them in my pocket and carry them around with me. If I've got 5 minutes to kill, I'll pull them out and look at them instead of looking at my phone or something. Near to test time, I got a highlighter out, and as I'm reading those, I'm highlighting stuff I definitely know. And then after I've done that, I've got index cards with unhighlighted things, and that's all I like to study. Nice and organized, very systematic. That's just the way I do it. You all might have a different way. Now, last bullet point here. Don't get overwhelmed. Many of these questions you can answer just by using your own logic. And for every 3 you get right, you can miss 1 and still pass. That's a lot of questions to miss. A lot of us are perfectionists here and we don't like to miss anything, but just keep that in mind. If it seemed, every time I took a section, I'm like, I missed too many on here. And then I go back and look at it, I'm like, yeah, that's probably right. I'm 95% sure. And then by the time I reread through it, I'm like, well, there's only like 4 or 5 I'm not sure about. So I don't know, it just kind of, it seems like you're missing more than you are sometimes. Let me show you guys how easy this thing can be. Y'all are gonna like this. These are 20 practice questions. Some of these, oh man. Come on now. Select for, oh, there it is. It's obscured by the sidebar there. I didn't think that I wouldn't be able to see it. There it comes. Okay, these are actual CFE questions. We have done 0 studying. We know nothing, right? So here's a 20-question exam. See what you can do with it. All right, so this is number 1, the removal of cash from a victim organization before the cash is entered into the accounting system. What is that? Now this is, do I?
I thought we were answering.
Yeah, we are, yeah. So, you know, this is a little more specific. If you hadn't encountered the term before, you might not know. But, you know, looking through there, you know it's not a fraudulent disbursement. You're not fraudulently dispersing anything. You're taking something, right? Lapping, you probably know what that is. So you kind of narrow it down to skimming versus cash larceny, and those are kind of the same thing. Skimming occurs before it's recorded in the books. Larceny is just grabbing it out of the cash register or something like that after it's already in the records, right? So we say skimming, right? And we're right. All right, that's a long one. These are the ones you hate to see because you're like, 75 seconds, I got to read all that and then answer it, and then you get overwhelmed. But take your time, you got time. Read through that. Now here's a tip. The CPA exam, they're out to get you. They're mean. They're trying to trick you, right? The CFE exam is not trying to trick you, all right? You'll come across something, you're like, well, that can't be the answer. This seems too easy. It is, all right? They're not trying to trick you. So we got Kane, the authorized signer on his company accounts, has prepared and signed a check, all right? It's payable to the plumber. He gave the check to Baker, his secretary, asked her to mail it to the plumber. All right, so we're taking our time getting all this figured out in our head. Instead, Baker took the check home, signed the plumber's name on the back. All right, so signed somebody else's name. Had her husband cash the check. What is this called? Is it an altered payee scheme? They didn't change who they're paying. Is it a forged endorsement scheme? Yeah, they took it and signed somebody. They endorsed it using somebody else's name, right? It's not a forged maker. It's not an authorized maker scheme. There you go. It's a forged endorsement scheme. You can logically answer a lot of these. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So there we go. Okay, number 3. So we're 2 for 2, right? Got 100 going. White, an employee of ABC Corporation, intentionally issued 2 payments for the same invoice. All right. After the disbursements had been mailed, White called the vendor and explained that a double payment had been made by mistake. She asked the vendor to return one of the checks to her attention. When the vendor returned the check, White took it and cashed it. All right. What is it called? So you look for what of those 4 things describes what happened to there. Shell company scheme, there's no shell company here. Pass-through scheme, doesn't really seem to describe what's happening. We didn't pass anything through anything. Receivable skimming, there's no receivables here. Pay and return scheme, paid, return. They're not trying to trick you, right? We don't know what the heck a pay and, if I said, hey, what's a pay and return scheme? You'll be like, I don't know, but you got all this. What is that? Looks like that describes it, right? We're right. Under Sarbanes, which of the following parties is responsible for establishing procedures for receiving and dealing with complaints and anonymous employee tips regarding irregularities in the company's accounting methods, internal controls, and auditing matters? So, what do y'all think? You need a little bit of background to answer this one, right? And we'll get plenty of talk on the Sarbanes thing, but if you think about maybe what you've heard in the past, Sarbanes is really big, and they mention these people over and over and over. What are y'all guessing on this? That I would be split 50-50 between them and audit committee if I didn't have any background on it. Sarbanes is big, big, big on audit committee. That's their thing. So it'd be that. So we missed one, whatever. We can miss 30 of them. So One type of securities fraud involves brokers who engage in excessive trading of customer account to create commissions for themselves and their firms. What could this be called? Excessive trading. They're just trading. Churning, right? They're not trying to trick you. We may not know what any of those 4 words really means if someone asked us to define them, but
Not converting anything.
we're not converting anything. We're not parking anything. We're not, leaving something somewhere. We're not front running anything. We're not trying to get up ahead of anybody, but we are churning stuff out, right? There you go. Which of the following is an internal control technique commonly used in computer applications to ensure that a particular elements between 2 or more data sources are consistent? This one's tough because I don't know between B and C, it could be either of those, right? So we can't just rely on logic on this one. We need to have actually read and remembered that one. I guess it could even be A, right? But they are looking at 2 or more data sources to see if they're consistent. They could be matching, they could be one-for-one checking, they could be sequence checking. That doesn't quite work as well as those other 2. Could even be none of the above, but usually none of the above is more obvious than that. So it's got a 50-50 chance on this. What would y'all guess?
1-for-1 checking.
1-for-1 checking, he guesses. You got it. There you go. All right, so now we get into some of the law stuff. You need a little more background to answer these, but say we don't have it. We are asked what the statute is that specifically outlaws the giving or receiving of anything of value for the purpose of improperly obtaining or receiving favorable treatment in connection with U.S. government contracts. So first thing you kind of got to do is translate that into everyday English. That's a wordy little sentence, right? So they've got a law that doesn't allow us to get anything for or give anything or get anything to receive favorable treatment. So what's that kind of describing? I think somebody chimed in on that one. Anti-kickback is right. Very good. So, oops. Anti-kickback act. So, I'll do this if you'll give me this. That's kind of what they're describing there. And by the time you read through the law section, these are pretty obvious. So we'll spend plenty of time with, especially the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. We'll spend a lot of time on that. All right. Good deal. All right, and then you're like, got to read all this. All right. A manager at a hardware place, which is publicly traded, suspects an employee of stealing, calls the cops. Officer says, we don't have resources to do anything here. But the cop says, hey, you see if you can get in that guy's trunk of their car and see if there's any inventory in there. So the manager does, finds stolen inventory. Which of the statements is true? They could not be in violation of the Fourth Amendment because it's not a government agency. They may be in violation of the Fourth Amendment because all publicly traded companies are qualifying as state actors. They could not be in violation of the Fourth Amendment, but they might be subject to civil liability. They may be in violation of the Fourth Amendment because it's acting at the suggestion of the government. See what I mean? Law's tough. So we don't really have a good background to answer this one, right? We will. The answer to this one is, let's see if somebody tried to answer that. Civil liability, which one is that? Okay, it's a good guess, but so the Constitution protects us from the government. All right, that's the whole the amendments do, and there has to be some kind of government involvement to be, subject to all of that. So the answer is actually there may be a violation of the Fourth Amendment because the cop, a government employee, has gotten involved and say, hey, you should do this. So there may be a violation because of that. We can't know all of them automatically. That's a tough one. But once we study it, we'll know. Stupid discovery stuff killed me when I took it without studying. And it kind of killed me when I skimmed it too. But I realize that, and we'll spend enough time on it to get it all sorted out. Discovery serves which of the following purposes? This one's pretty easy. We may not even know what discovery is, but which of these could sound right? Does it serve the purpose of us understanding and evaluating the details of the opposite side's case? Maybe. Does it serve the purpose for enabling speculative? You can stop there, right? You see the word speculative. We're not going to speculate on anything. We know better. So it's not that. Does it serve the purpose of us being able to gather information that's irrelevant? No, right? So B and C, not happening. D, not happening. It's not all of the above. So it's got to be A, right? Somebody may have chimed in on that. Third one, I don't know if that was in response to this one or not, but I forgot what the third one was now. I already went away from it. Sorry. Oh, the irrelevant one. Okay. So yeah, we'll spend a lot of time on discovery because I feel like it's kind of challenging. Bailey is a CFE being cross-examined in court on expert opinion related to fraud. The defense attorney is trying to trap Bailey on a bunch of what-if scenarios that would cause a distortion of Bailey's opinion. What should Bailey do? All right, you'll learn in a lot of this, you can kind of draw on your TV and movie watching over the years, courtroom dramas and things. This will help you in this course, I promise. A Time to Kill. If you have seen that, if you haven't, go watch it. It's got a lot of the courtroom procedure in it that we can kind of talk about, things like that. So you get a question about courtroom procedure. Think about movies and TVs you watch. They're not always true, but usually good enough, right? So we got Bailey being cross-examined, what-if scenarios. What should Bailey do? Bailey's a CFE who's an expert witness. Should Bailey object? No. Somebody on the witness stand, you don't see them objecting, right? They can't. Should Bailey avoid answering the question by talking about something else? No. Should Bailey look over at the judge and ask for a recess? No. That's all the attorney stuff, right? So that's going to have to be none of the above on that one. Which of the following methods can be used to obtain documentary evidence? Written consent, sounds reasonable. Subpoena, sure. Oral consent, maybe, probably. I figure 1 and 2 I'm pretty confident with, so that makes 3 kind of fall in there with it too. So let's go with all of the above on this one. Here we go. Which of the following is a sign of deception? I love this part of the course where you get into interviewing people in courtrooms and stuff. Which of the following is a sign of deception when displayed by a witness who's being interviewed? Changes in the voice pitch? Yeah. Oaths? I swear I didn't do it. Yeah. Comments regarding the interview? Stalling for time? So all of the above on this one. Blue is a CFE interviewing Green, a fraud suspect. When Blue asked pertinent questions, Green would frequently repeat the question. Why would Green do this? Would he just be ensuring that he understood the question? Probably not. Yeah, gaining time to frame the answer. Stalling, right? Not trying to frustrate the interviewer, and that's not going to do any good. So yeah. When an individual purchases real estate, he becomes a registrant in which of the following county records? I don't know. Let's see. Real property, makes sense. Tax assessor, got to be there. Property tax, sure. All of the above. When securing a desktop computer for examination, the fraud examiner should first review the files that may be of interest to make sure they are contained on that computer. Does that sound like something you would do? No. It's like, all right, let's get in here and let's dig around in this computer right here and see if that's the one. No. Yeah, you know better than that, right? You got to secure it, preserve it, then do something with it. You got to follow the procedure. Yeah. So was that true or false? That is false, right? Yeah. Baker, a CFE, has obtained an oral confession from a fraud suspect. This person has confessed to committed fraud, and he admitted to smuggling drugs in an unrelated case. How should Baker handle these admissions in the written confession? I kind of have to take a stab at this one, but what would y'all think? Should Baker include them both in the same statement? Take separate statements for each of the separate crimes? Or just ignore the whole drug smuggling thing altogether? Or something else? So it's not something else because this is so specific and vague. I mean, what would the something else be? Which of those three sounds like what you would want to happen if you were involved in this? Which would be the most orderly thing? Separate statements sounds good, right? Separate them out. You got, you're focusing in on this fraud thing, and then you got this drug thing. Well, let's put this over here and do this elsewhere, right? There you go. According to research, most embezzlers decide to commit their crimes because what? What would y'all think? Are they essentially dishonest people? No. They living beyond their means. Probably more often than they just have drug problems, right? It's like they just say, yep, embezzlers, drug problems. That's their problem. No. So yeah, on their means. Which of the following? Okay. Does anybody know who developed the well-known fraud triangle? No, we don't know that. All right. Anybody out there? And y'all are Googling it, I bet. Nobody. Oh, somebody's chiming in there real quick. Cressy, you knew that. I'm impressed. You're right. Yeah. Donald Cressy is the fraud triangle guy. Y'all won't forget that. Y'all might have that as a test question and you'll get it right. Donald Cressy is right. So Donald Cressy is the fraud triangle guy. We'll talk about these other two guys too, but Cressy's the guy. Yeah. Nice work. Given all of the following fraud prevention methods within organizations, which is probably the most effective? You will see this question one way or another, probably 2 or 3 times. This is important. Which of these is the most effective way to prevent fraud? Reduce a way for them to rationalize doing it. How are we going to do? That's not going to be easy, right? Having an open door policy, increasing the perception of detection, or screening employees. That's probably a good thing, but what does that even mean? If I tell all my students I have an open door policy, I'm telling you that so you won't cheat. That won't make sense, will it? How am I going to stop them from cheating? Figure out a way to keep them from rationalizing it? Well, how am I going to do that? I'm going to make them think they're going to get caught if they try it, right? So if we increase the perception of detection. I always told my principal's class, I'm like, I'm an auditor by trade. If you cheat, I'm going to catch you because I'm skilled in auditing. Like, that doesn't even make sense, but it scares them. So yeah, make a note of that and put a star by it. You'll run into that several times. If you have a system set up to where they think they're going to get caught, they're going to stay in line. I remember an audit client had a video camera sitting above the time clock where people punched in. I don't think the whole thing even worked. Kept them in line though, right? All right. Lane, a CFE, conducted a fraud examination at Blue Corp. The hardest thing about these is keeping all these names straight, by the way. So we got CFE, Blue Corp, and then we got Betty, who's a suspect in some money disappearing. CFE couldn't prove it. Later, the CFE discovered that Betty had been recently hired by someone else, another client of his. Under the Code of Ethics, Lane must inform Red Corporation. All right, think about this. We think this person stole money, but we couldn't prove it. Now they're being hired by somebody else. According to ethics, are we going to go say, hey, we think they might have stolen something, but we didn't prove it? No, no. We must not do that. It's part 2, so that's got to be it, right? Part 3 says, inform them if the evidence is clear and convincing. No, you're going to get yourself in trouble. You must not. There you go. We got them all right. Good for us. All right, those are old CFE questions. So this is not that intimidating, right? Just kind of reason through them, think it through, put yourself in real life. You know, what would you expect to be the case? Would you do this? Would you expect somebody to do this? What would you want them to do? A lot of these can be kind of logically answered. The law ones, though, a little trickier, but it's okay. Okay. Questions for me about this class, the CFE exam, anything at all? Life in general?
Everything that we talked about, is that on Canvas?
Not yet, but I will. I need to, I'll have to update this little deal. Once I update it for the new edition, I'll post it. I'll post the other things on Canvas as well.
As far as the links to getting the membership and whatnot, is that already on Canvas?
Yeah, it's in that file I put on there, or you can just Google ACFE student package and it'll pop up just as well. That's what she did. She didn't even read my stuff.
It's on the syllabus.
Oh, yeah, it is on the syllabus. You're right. Yeah, I did put it on the syllabus too. Yeah, I was very organized. Yes.
So is this class structured in a way where we're gonna go through like the easy stuff and then move from section 1 to 3 forward? Cause like say I wanted to not study for the 2 that you say are easier, I could go ahead and study law and other sections. And then that way I've got a little studying under my belt.
Right.
without spending a lot of time with that thing.
You can do it however you want. Yeah, I mean, anybody can have their own strategy. We're going to start with the easiest section first, just to get a feel for things. You know, feel for this book, how it's set up. I wouldn't want to start with law. I really wouldn't. But we're going to cover law second. So we're going to do it in 1, 2, 3, 4. So it all kind of works out to go in order like that. You know, like the easiest first, just to get a good feel for things, get our confidence going, and then hit law because you'll need some extra time to kind of think about that. Some of that law stuff pops up again in fraud investigation too. So if we skipped over law, then we'd be like, what the heck is that thing? So it works to go in 1, 2, 3, 4 order. But if you want to go rogue and do your own thing, you sure can. I mean, I always tell everybody every semester, you take this exam, pass it, you're done. So it's a good way to finish the class. Just get it done and you got your A. That's all we're doing in here is passing that thing. My main goal is pass the thing. I don't care how you do it as long as you do it honestly. By the way, don't cheat on this thing. You know, we'd make national headlines if somebody gets caught cheating on a fraud examination exam. So don't do that. All right, no cheating on this exam. That would be bad news. And you know, there'd be ways to do it. So do this honestly. When you finish, you got to sign a statement saying you did it all 100% on your own with no cheating. It's not open book, so you're not supposed to have notes there in front of you. Do it honestly. Don't cheat. You want to be proud of having that thing. You don't want to be like, well, I got the CFE, but I had a big old cheat sheet beside me taking it the whole time. You won't feel good about that. Don't do it. Got one more thing I want to show you. I said there'd be a lot of overlap on the stuff you see in the material you're looking at. So I printed this out from it. This is in the fraud examiner's manual, but you'll see repetition on this so many times. So I just like, here it is one time. And when you see it again, it's like, all right, I already know this, I'm skipping this. General red flags associated with fraud. So you'll see it time and time again. Domination of management by a single person or a small group. Practice by management of committing to analysts, creditors, whatever forecasts are out there. Ineffective communication, ineffective implementation, ineffective support, ineffective enforcement of their values, of their ethical standards, obvious stuff. Recurring negative cash flows, inability to generate cash flows. Rapid growth is a big one. Significant, unusual, or highly complex transactions, especially close to the end of the period. Related party transactions, not in the ordinary course of business, is a red flag. Recurring attempts to justify inappropriate accounting or gray area accounting. Formal or informal restrictions on the auditor that limits their access. All right. These are just good general red flags that'll show up one way or the other in several test questions. So I just kind of put that up there at the front for you to kind of have as a ready reference. You got it there. You don't have to not take note of it again every time you see it. So just trying to streamline things a bit. So I'll post that for you, even though it's in your manual. All right, what other questions or comments? Are y'all excited about this? I hope so. It's fun. It's easy-ish. I mean, I feel like it's one of the easier courses you'll take in the grad school. It's useful. I mean, you get out of here and you've got something to put on your resume. I think it'll be great.
So without the personal experience, putting on your resume, can you put CFE on?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, put it on there. Well, don't call yourself a CFE, but it's like CFE exam passed. Yeah, but yeah, you can, just make a note of it. And they'll be like, hey, this person's on top of things. So yeah, it'll look great. It'll look real good. While we're at it, CMA is pretty doable exam too. So while you're in test taking mode, go ahead and knock that thing out too. Just get all those letters. Can't hurt, right? Other questions or comments? Yes.
So I'm trying to think how to word.
Mhm.
But once we become a CFE, is that an important certification if you're just like an auditor or?
Oh yeah.
Like, how much more impressive is that going to be this little like maybe pay increase, that kind of stuff?
I mean, he's asking how much difference would it be on pay and how big of a deal would people place on having the CFE, and it just differ from people to people. One of the partners of one of the local firms pulled me aside at a meeting we had. He said, I've been really wanting to get into this line of things. He said, on one hand, I'm glad you're doing this. On the other hand, I hate that we didn't kind of get at it first or something like that. I don't know. So he was really interested in getting his workers to get that designation and start kind of getting into the whole fraud examination area. I think he was a little bit worried that all the students here would go to competing firms and kind of knock him out of that. So that would have been really important to that particular person. I would think any audit firm would value that, yeah, because you're going to have all this additional expertise that they're not probably going to have on all this law stuff, on all this investigation stuff, on all these red flags. So yeah, I think anybody would value it for sure. And worst case scenario, can't hurt. You can be proud of yourself that you did that. Anytime you have an email signature or your business card, you can have that CFE on there. It always adds a little credibility for sure, even if you're not using it per se in your job you end up in. Yep, question on here. I am a state examiner and a CFE is more important than a CPA with my department. So that's awesome. So you're not a CFE already, are you? Yay, okay, good. It's going to happen one of these days. So that's good. That'll benefit you a lot. That's great. So awesome. And that's good to know. So yeah, I can't imagine anybody not valuing it, because this is just, it's a really important area no matter what. You know, even if you went completely outside of accounting and owned your own business or worked for somebody, you know, these things are going to be important. You're like, hey, that's not appropriate behavior over there. That's a bit of a red flag for that employee. You might want to watch them. Or if you own your own business, you'll know red flags to look out for. You know, my wife owns a business, and you know, I make sure to minimize the risk in those areas, and I'm like, hey, we need to kind of tighten this up a little bit and keep that temptation away, and we need to watch this. You know, it's just simple things that you may have learned in audit class about segregation of duties and stuff like that, and we'll beef that up quite a bit in here. So I think it'll be extremely useful no matter what. I really do. Other questions? And it's a lot of fun. It's a super fun class. It's fun preparing. And I like taking tests. I'm weird, so y'all may not share the joy that I do, but I had a blast doing the CFE exam. It's fun for me. I'm weird. What else? You don't laugh at me. Y'all are probably weird too. Y'all are excited. I can tell. Y'all are going to love it. You're not excited to read it? That reading is nothing, I promise. There's nothing to it. Other questions or comments?
I'm not very familiar with audit. I just do know sometimes. So,
Mhm.
like, I'm definitely gonna have to do some studying because I don't know really anything. Like,
You don't have an audit background.
No.
You'll be fine. You know, there's no, I mean, you know, there's a little bit of overlap with some of the concepts, but there's not going to be any generally accepted auditing standards that you'll need to know. You're not going to have to know how to test transactions. You're not going to have to know how to gather audit evidence or any of that. So with no audit background, you're fine. This is kind of off to the side a bit. You'll be all right. What else? This will not help you on the CPA exam. It'll help you kind of build that test taking confidence, but you won't see this material on CPA exam. Sorry about that. It's different. Other questions or comments? Okay. I love this class. I love this semester when we get to do this class. Okay. Read, take good notes, stay organized, stay on top of it. Good luck and enjoy.